Today's guest spent 14 years inside a family dry cleaning business, not as an heir coasting on legacy, but as the operator who showed up, rebuilt the systems, and scaled it to 14 locations and over 90 employees. Then sold it for seven figures in 2023. Since then, Ian Noble has been on the other side of the table as a capital allocator and investor through Run Steady Investments, deploying capital into mobile home parks and private lending and other opportunities. But here's what makes his story worth your time. He didn't just build a business, he built one worth selling. And now he evaluates other people's businesses through the eyes of someone who actually ran one. Ian, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So, kick us off with what's been the most significant lesson that you've learned this past year?
This past year has been about partnerships. I now focus solely on the real estate business, and you quickly realize the importance of a good partner, especially when you have all these deals that are presented to you. And so I'm heavy focus on good partnerships and working with good people that I feel that have the best interest of me and everybody else that's involved with anything we do.
How do you vet out good partners?
It's a slow process. Takes a long time. I start number one, before any sort of deals out there, I'm trying to make relationships to know that this would be maybe someone that we'll potentially partner with in the future or that I would feel good about partnering. So I first start with, A, do I get along with them? And do I feel that there's a connection to where we could work together long term? Because I think that's the foundation of any good partnership. Even if I'm not particularly running a deal or whatever my role is, I want to know that we get along. Would you want to sit next to that person on a plane for 4 hours? And could you have good conversation with them? So that would be number one. And then typically after I get to know them for a while, check resources online. Eventually I invest with them. And the goal is to make sure they are who they say they are, that their deals perform, and that someday maybe there's an opportunity to work with them and get into their deals as well. So, and that comes with all the good stuff, background checks, flying out to the property, trying to do anything and everything you can do to cut through the noise to make sure that what you're doing is as safe as it possibly can be.
Yeah, and we were talking before we hit record, and you had a really interesting perspective that when you're investing and when you're raising funds as a fund manager, you look at it through the lens of an investor first, right? So you're evaluating the partners as a potential sponsor to invest with first. You dip your toes in with some investment, and you're like, okay, do they have the goods? Can they pull through? Can they actually do what they say, right?
Yeah. And it's a really fun approach because unlike a business that's trying to satisfy the needs of their, profits or revenue, whatever it may be, I'm looking at my personal wallet first. And I want to make sure, is this good for me and my family? Do I like it? And then if it is, I feel really good about bringing other people in with me. So getting to play investor first is fun. And before I got into this business, I was just an investor for myself. And it gets boring. You think this is so much fun in the world of real estate. There's a lot of opportunity, and you obviously know all the benefits that come along with it. But as a business owner, I didn't know all this stuff. I've been in real estate for 10 plus years now, 12 years since I've started my first rentals. And I was buying single family. Then I started buying little commercial properties, retail, triple net leasing, things of that nature. And I got my toes wet in a lot of different avenues in real estate, but I was doing it all myself. So I found that partnerships are really fun to, team up with people and not just do it all yourself. But for a business owner, this whole world of passive investing that's out there that I play in now, because I was so focused on running my business, I wasn't looking outside the box. So it's been a really fun transition. I'm still an active real estate owner and landlord and all the good stuff. And I definitely, there are pros and cons to both, but it's fun helping other business owners that aren't real estate people get involved because they have successes in their own fields. They have money to do so, right? The capital to put out, but they don't have the time or the expertise or maybe the desire to do it. So that's been really fun getting people to join in with me as we go in and, make some new owners.
Yeah. So tell us, like, how did you? So you started from the business side. You were running the dry cleaning business, right? Maybe tell
Yes.
us more about that. Just like how you sort of got here in a nutshell.
Sure. Yeah. Second generation business owner. My dad had started a dry cleaners in the 80s and built up locations. I'm in Austin, Texas. And along the way, he had burn out very quickly. It's a customer service business. You're dealing with high volume of garments. Things go wrong. Customers get upset. And he was burnt out. So after college, I got involved with the business. I started from the ground up, started pressing clothes,
Mhm.
ironing in the heat in Texas in the summer in those cleaning facilities. If it's 105 outside, I can't even tell you what the temperature is inside these things. There's steam plants and equipment everywhere. It's brutal. So learn from the bottom, and eventually, just every role of that company, I put myself in their position, and I bought the company a few years later. So bought my dad out, seller financed that, and along went 7 figures into debt at that time. I think I was in my mid-20s, and then from there just try to build the business. And there was no secret formula in that industry. It's not a hands-off ownership type of business. It's people talk about laundromats a lot, and that being a business where you can maybe be absentee, but I don't believe in the dry cleaning world. There are successful operations out there where the owner or at least their upper management is not heavily involved in every single day of that operation. So that led to my burnout eventually too. And survived COVID in that business. We lost 85% of revenue
Oof,
in a matter of days in March of 2020.
crazy.
Yet there were 95 employees, 14 locations. We had cleaning facilities. And so I was shutting things down, firing people. And thankfully, along the way, was putting aside reserves to make sure nobody could have prepared for what that did for a small business. But I would put aside daily reserves, and that helped us survive and eventually thrive after COVID. Business came back booming, and had the opportunity to sell a couple years later, and
Very cool.
that's where I'm
So
at today.
yeah. So how did you have the kind of uh, inclination to set aside reserves? So was it something that your father taught you, or is it just like you wanted to do this?
I'm very frugal by nature, and I think too many people get excited about success, and I'm a bit of a pessimist to where you think, well, something's going to go wrong, just because things do in business, and you always need to be prepared. So I'd heard other business owners out there saying, something as simple as a tax bill, like a quarterly tax bill would come up, and they don't have enough money to pay their tax bill. And I'm thinking, well, you're not doing something right. So it was years back. I just started moving, I forget what percent it was of sales every single day into an account.
Mhm.
And over the years, when any sort of bill came up or you had to buy a piece of dry cleaning equipment, dry cleaning machines, the actual large machines that do the cleaning portion of it, they're about $100,000. Maybe now they're $120,000. You don't want to go through financing the equipment and all that. Maybe that was a poor business decision at the time, but I always wanted to make sure that we could afford it and just get it done, move on, and have it the next day. So yeah,
Yeah.
I saw other people fall into traps without making money, but not having money to pay taxes or expenses. And so I wanted to make sure I didn't ever fall in that category.
Yeah, definitely. I'm very similar, and I think frugality is a superpower when it comes to entrepreneurship because, like, you just give yourself and your business that much more runway and that much more margin of safety. Like, you never know when you might need it, right? Like, a million things can go wrong in a business.
Yeah. And you can't control your revenue. You can control expenses, but you cannot control revenue. It was fun. So much so that back in the day, we were a high volume based business. And if I could negotiate the price of a hanger for, a penny or a penny and a half less, and then you look at that, and I was so excited about saving a penny because when you have, you know, 10, 20, hundreds of thousands of hangers going through there, it all adds up. So that's the
Mhm.
fun part about being an entrepreneur. And you're right, it's a superpower for those that are good at it.
Yeah. So tell us, like, how did you kind of get through COVID? I mean, did you like retool the business? Did you like, do other things other than like dry cleaning to like get through? How did you make it through?
Sure. I pivoted about a year before it happened. I was fortunate to pivot our strategy, and there were only retail locations, brick and mortar stores. The industry was heading towards pickup and delivery. We can thank Amazon for that. And so I shifted the model a few years prior to where I wasn't opening any more locations and we only had a mobile delivery fleet.
Hmm.
So that was a very good savior throughout COVID. People weren't
Yeah.
driving to the store, and our business model changed from dry cleaning was, think by the piece, suits, ties, button up shirts, dresses. What changed was a lot of our sales went towards wash and fold, which is just
Mhm.
everyday laundry, socks, underwear. that kind of stuff that people still needed. So we would pick up and deliver from their house, and that strategy shifted. We also ended up Austin had a couple years running, they had some freezes, and this is not in Texas. When it freezes, it's a big deal. Like if it gets to 31 and there's a little bit of ice, the state shuts down, or the city. Austin had some severe weather events, and that
Mm.
got us into the restoration business. Broken pipes and houses were flooding. So there are all sorts of odd jobs that allowed us to get through. And meanwhile, as we did, we had reserves, we had PPP money from all the grants that were out there. Other dry cleaners started to shut down.
Mm.
So I was able to raise prices. We had less volume. We made more money, higher profit, and now the workload was less. So it was a blessing in disguise to get me through. And then naturally, we acquired more customers just by competitors going out of business.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's like when the times get tough, that's like the strong get stronger, right? And then the weak just get wiped out.
That's what happened. Yeah. And it's sad too for those that did. But if you were to put it on paper how it unfolded, that was it.
For sure. And like, you'll see statistics that are like, 90% of small businesses fail within like the first 5 years, and you're like, can't be true. And you
Yeah.
see things like this, and you're like, okay, I get it.
Yeah, same with second generation businesses. They're statistically they're never as good as the first generation, but you don't want to be a failing statistic. And plus, it's different. In no business, everybody puts their heart into it, and at the
Mhm.
fundamental level, you can even large businesses, you can call it a family business because it started with a family and a dream, and so there was a legacy component to it to where I didn't want to let it fail. And I was going to work. I worked so hard, even when we didn't have clothing or product coming in the door. I never worked harder in my life during that first year of COVID when that
Yeah.
well-oiled machine came to a stop.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So when you kind of took it over from your father, like how did you run it differently? I mean, did he kind of just like teach you everything, and then you sort of like ran with the same playbook, or did you like change it up?
It was a unique situation because when I first got involved, he already wasn't going to work anymore. So there was a general manager and some other managers in place that trained me. But I was fortunate to be able to act like an owner from the beginning. I wasn't, right. I told you I was pressing clothes, I was working the front counter, all that good stuff. But when I eventually bought it and took over, employees didn't even know. I was already had been doing it for I think 5 years at that point, and so we were able to just structure it on the back end, and it was an official sale, and so that helped me along the way. But hard lessons learned because I mentioned earlier the burnout, not having. Let's say coming out of college, I was 21 years old. I just turned 21 when I started in this business, and it wasn't ever the plan. I had planned to go work for some big company. I'm glad my dad pulled me back in because it gave me, changed the trajectory of my life and taught me small business and entrepreneurship and real estate. But fortunately, it was an easy transition and, you know, smooth sailing.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, like when you kind of ran with it, the transition happened afterwards. Did you kind of go heavy on like marketing or like different strategies that maybe you didn't do before?
Yes. And a lot of low hanging fruit. So the dry cleaning industry historically is behind in terms of technology. So we were able to implement a standard point of sale system. It didn't exist before. There were paper receipts. It was brutal. There was no uniform code, and employees were wearing whatever they wanted to.
Yeah.
Fixed that up, fixed up signage, fixed up websites. There were many things that changed.
Mhm.
Most beneficial thing that I did was use a review management software. We, in that industry, pretend that 95% of your customers are happy, but a lot of times as a happy customer, you don't write a review because
Yeah.
the expectation is that it's done right. So in that industry, obviously the 5%, it wasn't even 5%, the 2% that were upset would write a review. I never had a formal system in place. And when we
Mhm.
went to text based review prompts from the customers, all of a sudden our stores went from having 10 reviews with a 2-star rating to 200 reviews with a 4.8-star rating. That naturally grew business beyond what I could ever imagine just by having that presence. And we didn't have that stuff put in place. And it was funny, before getting involved with that, the business was growing and sales were improving year over year. But if you Googled us online, I wouldn't go there. So
Yeah. Interesting.
low hanging fruit and just lots of hard work.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like hard work is the entry ticket to success. Like there is no success without hard work. But like, you have to do things very differently and like, how do you like outmaneuver other people to make it happen, right? I don't think like what you said, like most people don't think of reviews. I mean, now like you and I, it's like pretty obvious, but
Yeah.
like to
Yeah.
other people like mom and pops, they're like, what? Reviews? Like Google's I don't do that.
Yeah. My business is word of mouth. You hear that a
Yeah.
lot. It's like,
Yeah.
well, yes,
They
but
pride
it could be
themselves
a
on
lot
it.
better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So how did it, change your business? So was it like a significant increase? Like we're talking like 20%?
Yeah. I mean, looking back to when I first got involved, by the time I entered to the time I left, was able to triple the profit of the business, almost triple, maybe like 2.8 times where I first started, and just cleaned it up to where the right staff was working, and it changed so much. So,
Mm,
but again, you can't attribute it to anything but hard work. There were little levers that were pulled along the way, but the good thing was I was never afraid to try and fail. So you'd have crazy ideas on how to improve efficiencies and whatnot, and we would just do them. And even if nobody agreed, I'd say, let's just try it. And if it fails, then we'll switch back tomorrow. So I
mm,
think that willingness to try these different maneuvers to see what works, what sticks is important. And a lot of entrepreneurs naturally fall into this because business is hard, and no matter what product you offer, it will be a grind. This is something that people that don't have a business, everyone thinks their career is hard to some degree, but with entrepreneurship, you go home with it. It all falls on your shoulders. And so you have to A, take care of yourself, and B, you got to be the leader. And I think there's that whole saying, if you own the business, you should be working on your business and not in your business. But I definitely was working in it, and I feel that it was important to do so. Yeah, in theory, I would have loved to be working on it and just hanging out, but it wasn't the case. But it all
right.
worked out okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it is possible to like just work on the business and be chilling, but like that's more like the investor mindset, and like there are investor business owners out there and like people that grew their business to that extent. But like, heck, I mean, when you're like below, I mean, I like say 30 million in revenue, like it's very hands-on and like,
Yeah.
maybe you're not like opening the mail, but you're still driving the bus with your team, with, strategy, like with morale. There's like so much more than people think.
You're exactly right. Yeah, it takes so much work behind the scenes to just make it. And you mentioned the failure rate earlier on. It's true. It'd be interesting to see if it changes over time, but
Mm,
at least in the service, that was my mind was limited to the service industry, and we would see people come and go all the time.
yeah. What do you think could change the failure rate up or down?
I think that now is a pivotal time. There's all this introduction to AI and small businesses that are not going to adapt. I think they'll fall behind because the potential is, I don't want to say infinite, but it allows businesses to operate more efficiently with less hours equals less overhead equals more profit. So that's the idea. And never before have people had the opportunity to access these tools. Even if you're a mom and pop and you can't afford staff, if you pay a little attention to what's out there, you can really increase your business in some capacity to where you free up your time and you have a computer helping you, or another brain that's out there working for you. So I think that's going to be the big pivotal moment is if people don't dive in. I'm not that person that's going to say it's AI or die for your business, but I think that the successful businesses will latch onto it quickly, and you'll see a big difference in those that take it and those that don't.
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing that like I continuously kind of wrestle with is just like how much AI to use. Because like
Yeah.
I know when it's like the corporate world, people like to talk about AI in their high chairs and stuff. Like they don't know what they're talking about. Like
Yeah.
you should learn how to use Claude Code or like do whatever and like actually practice it, and then you'll find like how inconsistent like the output is, and you're like, can I actually put this feature into my business and have it like consistently perform at a good enough like quality? And the answer is probably no. So
Yeah.
how much like time do you spend on like the skill versus, hey, just like run your business and like AI, like those companies, they're going to try to make money, they'll catch up.
I know. And at the lowest level, think about people calling a business. So people should at least, even if they don't believe in it, set something up to where your phone is always answered at work. Because if you're a customer and you're calling a business and they don't pick up, you're going to call the next one.
Yeah.
So I think that more businesses will focus on we're going to get that call answered even 24 hours a day and set appointments. These things can be handled in the back end to where, and look, that already existed before with
Yeah.
call centers and things like that. But now I
Mhm.
think there's a lot more opportunity for everyone to do that because people are short circuited in today's world. You'll move to the next thing fast. And so we're all fighting for attention and how to get people to stick to our business. And you don't want to leave any room for error.
Yeah, I mean, you're so right. Like, so I'm in New York, and like when I look for a restaurant, like I call them. If they don't pick up, I move on to the next one. I don't care how many
Yeah.
reviews they have. Yeah. So walk us through, sort of like the towards the end, of your kind of career in like dry cleaning and like transitioning into like investments, real estate stuff. So like, how did you kind of like prepare your company to be sold? Like, was there a decision one day that you're like, I think it's time, or how did you know?
It was an emotional decision. The company after COVID became very profitable. And I was young. I think I was 35 at the time. I know that I wasn't going to replace my income anywhere else, but mentally I was I was present at home physically, but I was very absent-minded and emotionally I was somewhere else when I was at my house. So I think
Mm,
I started to have children, and at this point I thought I don't want to be this person. I remember I look back to when my dad, growing up with my dad and my mom, having that time with them, and I thought I don't want to be that parent because I really, as an entrepreneur, you also love what you do and you love the game. So I'd work a lot, but it was just time to move on. And I'd reached a ceiling to where I really needed to reinvest back into the company to take it to the next level, or I could sit idle and just be comfortable. But I'm never comfortable just sitting still. And I felt that it was going to be best for someone to take it to the next chapter. And before the sale, just getting ready for that, it was much more putting other people in positions to where they had more control of the business. I think that was the bottleneck because I'd wanted to plant myself into every operation. It led to my burnout. I was the bottleneck and I wasn't letting other people shine in the company that needed to shine. So I really made a concentrated effort the last year and a half, 2 years to get those people in positions to where they didn't need to ask me anything. And life was a lot better once those decisions were made too. People always think that entrepreneurs, maybe I can do this better than them. But if you have someone who's a high performer, take good care of them, give them some control, let them feel, or however you structure it to where they are invested in that business as an owner or in profit share or something to where there's loyalty there. Because without your staff and your employees, your business goes nowhere. And so that was the big shift for me, setting it up. And it was so incredible when I sold. I thought people asked me, how long were you on? What was the transition like? Of course, we structured it on the sale agreement that I was going to be around as a consultant and all this, but I got fired as a consultant because I wasn't needed. It was maybe a week or two. That's how much the business was transitioned to our leaders that are still there. The new owner retained them and just an amazing guy, and everything went as well as I could have hoped for. But yeah, you think about this, you think you're this important person in your business, but if you set it up right and if you walk away, it should run without you, which was really cool to see at the very end. I would park next to the office at a Starbucks and just wait for them to call me, think they're going to need me, but they did not, and it was refreshing. It felt good.
wow.
So
Yeah. That's
yeah,
that's great. I mean, that's like a testament to you building that system. And yeah, I mean, I think a lot of entrepreneurs like they just feel like they have to be in the thick of everything. Like no one can do it better than I can. So yeah, they never
yeah,
kind of progress to that next level.
yeah. You're spot on there.
Yeah. So how did you get into real estate, much less mobile home parks?
The real estate journey started back in 2012, and along the way, I'd seen my dad participate in real estate, and I think that's what allowed him to step away from the business when he did. So I kind of followed suit. Different style of properties. He was into commercial properties, and I started young buying residential properties, leasing them out. Just to buy. I'm a buy and hold guy, and so along the way, what I would do is I would take all the profit from the business or what I would pay myself. I would live beneath my means, and I would put the rest back into real estate. And it allowed me to get a property almost every year
Hmm.
from that time forward. So a little bit at a time, the money comes in for the business. There's not a ton of cash flow on these rentals, but if you keep at it for many years, it really changes the scope when you look back 10 years behind you and say, you've got a lot of equity. COVID forced a lot of appreciation. Nobody could control that, but it
Mhm.
happened. And so that goes into your bucket of what you've built. So when I stepped away, it was the natural path for me after selling the company. I always tried to get my rental income to match my business income or what I took from the business. And it didn't get there, but it was comfortable enough to when I sold and income stopped from the dry cleaners, I had set up everything from the last 10 years of building up my own portfolio. So I explained to people getting into real estate, they're like, how did you become you were a dry cleaner and now you're in real estate? And I try to explain to them, no, I was in real estate the whole time. Like that's where all my efforts were concentrated when I wasn't running the business. And now I'm full time, in real estate, but business got me there. And I
Yeah.
think that's really, you talk to a lot of successful business owners, whether if they're not in real estate yet, they may get there or probably will get there someday because they recognize the wealth that comes with it, the time freedom, and all the other benefits that come along with it. But that was what it led me to. And then when the business sold, uh, I needed some tax write offs.
Yeah.
There was a bill coming up, and you can't avoid these tax bills, but you want to keep as much as you can. So I used depreciation, cost segregation studies on all my properties. I hadn't done that before, just did it all in 1 year, and then once I saw it, you can't unsee it. Next thing you know, it's like, wow, this is very powerful. And so now that's my MO moving forward is just figuring out how do I keep getting real estate, keep depreciating properties and reducing taxes and just keep building this machine. So it's been a lot of fun, and I was just an investor for a while and then got bored of doing that and want to help other business owners. So that's where I'm at today with what I do with Run Steady and investing into these deals. And you asked about mobile home parks.
Mhm.
I think it fit my personality. I love the asset class. It was boring. It was low risk. I'm a low risk person. The thought was, look, I just sold this company. I worked my tail off for 15 years. I am not going to put any of this money at risk. So that asset class was very appealing to me and have focused on that specifically the entire time since.
Very cool. And how did you learn about this asset class? I mean, like mobile home parks, like it wasn't really popular until like recently, right?
Yeah. It's a great question. So when I first got involved, there was a group out there that I'd been following for quite some time, and passive investing was very foreign to me. I didn't, you're used to controlling everything as an entrepreneur. And when I had my active portfolio and still do, giving up decision making abilities was very tough. And so I started in the industry by finding somebody that I knew and trusted. And I strongly believe that's the best way still to this day in the industry to partner with people because there's a lot of deals out there and you need to find the right people.
Mhm.
I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people now and you just get like this feeling about them that this deal is so great and they create all this urgency and you got to do it. And sometimes it's true, right? Sometimes there are finite windows to participate in this stuff, but if you feel that that's not the case, and it becomes a game of, a psychology game of dealing with who am I going to work with and who am I investing with. So it's more important than ever, right? For people that are doing this because you can trust yourself the most, right? And but if you're going to flirt with this idea of passive investing in anything, you're giving up your ability to do that. And you're
Yeah.
putting your money forth today so that somebody else can work actively on your behalf so that you get to be passive.
Yeah.
It's the whole idea.
So That's an interesting point. So, I mean, you as a business owner, I mean, a lot of business owners think like you. I mean, they built their business very hands on, and like they're kind of reluctant to give up control almost. And the idea of passive investing almost sounds counterintuitive to them. So, like, how did you kind of understand it or make peace with it and like make that transition?
The very first go around again was motivated by my tax bill that was coming up. So my specific strategy was, look, we can get real estate. We have real estate professional status. We have Airbnbs. We've got all these rentals. I'm no longer in the business, and I'm married. So this changes the equation and allows us to do this. And it was solely based on that. And then from there, I think again, it was just the opportunities that were out there at the time. I was looking for something that had a little bit more, I'll call it protection. And for me, with mobile home parks, I fell in love with the idea of, hopefully transitioning these lots to tenants owning them, giving some pride of ownership to them. Because you're in the space, is long, the residents stay a long time. There's a
Yeah.
supply cap. They're not going to build a new one next door. For all these reasons, I thought, okay, this is the asset class I want to focus on. Now, that's not to say that there aren't other good ones out there. Anyone in real estate knows that you can be successful anywhere in real estate. I have buddies that own, one person specifically, like 55 houses, single family homes. And all these
Wow.
people always say, well, you get into single family homes and then you graduate to something bigger. And that guy would laugh at that, right? He's
Yeah.
incredibly successful from doing it. So it's not to say that mobile home parks are the greatest thing since sliced bread, but if you look at larger scale projects and protection, do think they hold a very crucial space, or part of someone who's looking for a lower risk profile. And then what's funny about it is when you discuss it with people that's what you're interested in, and Leo, you've probably run into this, like
Yeah.
trailer parks. What are you doing?
Yeah.
But there's different levels of every asset class, and there's rundown shopping centers and apartment complexes and houses. So I think that mobile home parks have a bad stigma and a reputation of being this, for someone that doesn't know, perhaps like a
Mhm.
dumpy place, but it's so wrong. You've seen how nice these communities are around the US. There's families that are living there. And I'm very passionate about it now just
Yeah.
because it aligns with the risk, the community. We got an affordable housing crisis. These are all the reasons why I stuck to that, for my business and what I concentrate on.
Yeah. When it comes to the stigma and it changing, you know, in college, right? Like we learned that in economics class that the markets are efficient, right? And it's one thing to learn it from theory, but it's another thing to see it. So, whereas like 20, 30 years ago, yeah, sure, like trailer parks might have been a thing, but like now, you have so many REITs like deploying like billions of dollars into this industry that they've just like rapidly professionalized it. And like
Yeah.
these homes look beautiful. And it's like changing.
And some of the new ones that are being built are very impressive. If you're on the inside of that thing, you may not know you're in a mobile home.
Yeah. For sure, for sure. Barbara Corcoran has a mobile home in California that was like almost 2 million bucks, apparently.
See?
Have you seen that? Yeah.
It's worth 100K, but it costs 2 million in
Yeah.
California. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. She did like a whole walkthrough of her home. I mean, granted, it's like a double wide and stuff, but
Yeah.
still, yeah. I mean, look, the capital finds a way, right? Like capital seeks returns and stuff. So they've discovered the same things that you have. That hey, like this is a boring asset, low risk. People are in here. They're like in it for the long haul, like 10 plus years residency as opposed to like 2 years and stuff. So super compelling.
Yeah. And coming from being an active real estate investor, it only takes, you look at running stuff yourself and letting other people run it. There's obviously risk with letting other people run it, but everyone's had that story as a landlord where they just asked yourself, why am I doing this? And even if they have a property manager in place. And so that's been a real interesting thing too with this world of passive investing, because frankly, you know, if you can avoid these calls and these problems that come up from tenants, it's pretty liberating compared to having to deal like some. And it comes in waves. I'll have days where I'll get text messages from 3 tenants, and I remember screenshotting this and sending it to a friend and say, "Hey, check this out. I think I had 3 HVAC systems go down." in a matter of like 8 hours.
That's
And
wild.
so, and I knew they were older, right? So you do the math on that day. I'm like, but,
Yeah,
you know, let someone else deal with it. And it makes life a little bit easier.
that's true. That's true. Yeah. So I have one more question for you, but before then, how can the audience kind of reach you? Who are you looking to meet? How can we help you?
Yeah. So what I do now is I told you I'm an investor first, but I act as a fund manager to where I help other business owners come in with me for when we see a good low risk deal. For the listeners of the show, I created a cheat sheet. It's something I wish I would have had when I was a business owner. For anyone who's curious about what passive investing is like, what it looks like when you sign up for a deal behind the scenes, and what you should expect to get when you're on someone's email list, or how the deal unfolds. So check that out. It's a good resource for anyone who's interested, and we'll leave a copy of that in the show notes. And other than that, my website's runsteadyinvestments.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, but I think the cheat sheet's going to be the most valuable for the listeners.
I love it. I appreciate it, Ian. And final question for you is, what's the best piece of advice that you've got that you've ignored for too long?
I'm going to date back to when I was running my business. I had opportunities to seek out mentors or find partners, and I ignored it because at that time I put greed in front of smart, so let's call it. So one example comes to mind. I knew that somebody, years into owning the business should take over my role. But I thought, well, that's going to cost X, and that means I'll make X less than what I make right now. And I think that had I adopted that method earlier, and had more people, key people in the company grow with me and not try to be, alone at the top, I would have been much happier. And I think small business would have been much more rewarding if I adopted that mantra early on.
Yeah,
Young and dumb. I don't want to say dumb. You just you don't know what you don't know. And now, my perspective has changed. Children change a lot, right? And so I didn't have children at the time. I think that would have accelerated my movement to get there, but that would probably be what comes to mind.
yeah. Youth is wasted on the young. That's what they say.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, sounds great, Ian. Thanks for all your wisdom.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.